So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you the story about how I went from overqualified, unemployed, military spouse to co-founder and chief operating officer of a multi-million-dollar company. But first, I want you guys to take a second and think about all the ways that you define yourself. So maybe that's your profession, or that you're a spouse, a parent, a stay-at-home mom, or even a student. Maybe you're not sure. And then I want you to take a second after that and think about how it would make you feel to have to redefine that. So have you ever had to move your home from one state to the next? Or go from married to divorced? Or what about when you make the transition from student to graduate to professional? Have a job and lose one? We often choose to define ourselves by what we do. And so what happens when that path is changed? Or those plans are altered, and maybe even sometimes without our permission. So those periods of transition can leave us feeling confused and lost, and often we consider those some of the most challenging times in our lives. But I'm here today to suggest that in those shifts, in those paradigm shifts in our lives, that there's an opportunity to truly define ourselves. So I can tell you that nobody experiences a life of transition like a military spouse. With career-long periods of uncertainty, the constant relocation, and we live in an age where an overseas deployment is not just a possibility, but it's on a scheduled rotation. The active duty military spouse population is incredibly unique, but we make up only 0.2% of the population. So what that means is our stories go largely untold. Sometimes those struggles and those issues never get talked about. And so what I want to do today is tell you a little bit about my story. In 2011, I graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design with a master's in architecture. I was excited, to say the least. I had a degree that was hot off the press, I had a brand new wardrobe, and I was ready to take on the world. But I was also a brand new military spouse. And so the Army had different plans. My husband had just been relocated to a tiny mountain town in the North Georgia mountains of about 5,000 people. So there's not a whole lot of architecture happening there. This was a transition that I was resisting. Okay, this was a roadblock. This wasn't in my plans. I didn't like it. Right about that time, I was having this tantrum, if you will. I met my business partner, Lisa. And sure enough, she was going through the same identity crisis. So in the weeks and the discussions that followed us meeting, we had this two-part realization. First, that as military spouses, if we wanted something for ourselves, that we were going to have to make it. There was nobody coming to save us. And second, that it wasn't just us. There were tons of talented, capable, incredible individuals in our same shoes. And so we thought, if we can do something for ourselves and at the same time make the lives of our community a little bit better, that's a win-win. And so later that year in 2011, we co-founded a company called Riveter. And we make bags to support military spouses. So I guess that makes us the bag ladies. And we started making these bags in our garage. As not glamorous as it sounds, I can promise you it wasn't. And we made these bags, and we knew we wanted to provide flexible income for military spouses. But it wasn't until we had the question, I need to go home. My husband's in the field, or he's about to deploy. I need to be with my family. Can I take these parts with me? Or I'm PCSing or moving in 6 months. What's going to happen to my job then? And in that moment, we realized it wasn't just about flexible income. We needed also to provide mobile income. And so we were making 2 bags to make 5 bags, and 5 to make 10, and 10 to make 20, and so on. And before we knew it, we had launched this national manufacturing network into the world. So military spouses making parts and pieces all across the country, somebody making cutting and sewing liners, small leather pieces, canvas pieces, and they would ship them all back to us, where we assembled them and we got them ready for retail. So business was good. But about 6 months later, in 2012, it was Lisa's time in Georgia was coming to an end, and her family had to move. And so we decided that she would take the financial side of the house and the business development on the road, and I would stay back and manage and grow operations. And so for another year and a half, we just steadily continued to grow. And that number got bigger and bigger. People finally thought, okay, these ladies aren't so crazy. Maybe they have something going on. And one day my husband came home and said, Cameron, guess what? It's time to go. And so we packed up the shop, the house, and the kids, probably in that order, and we headed to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So in the 2 years that we've been here, we've been able to completely rebuild operations from the move. We caught the eye of a Shark Tank producer. We pitched and got a deal. And we brought business to a level that so many people told us wasn't probable. Not that it wasn't possible, just not probable. We have over 50 people on our team. We make hundreds of bags a week, and we've provided some kind of employment and opportunity to over 100 military spouses. So I want you to think, when you're in those moments of transition, or you're feeling like uncertainty is weighing you down, I challenge you to remember these three things. What is it about that uncertainty that's leaving you feeling lost? And then be honest with yourself. Can you do more? So for me, when I walked away from the idea of getting a degree or getting a job in my degree and getting a job in architecture, it wasn't because I was giving up. It was because I began to understand what I could really control. So as a military spouse, I couldn't change where we were stationed. I couldn't move the city closer, but I knew I wanted something more. I wanted meaningful employment. And so at that time, I realized I had to be able and willing to do something about it. So that brings me to my next point, which is be prepared to take a risk. Get comfortable with that idea. As military spouses, that uncertainty is constant. What if you move? What if your partner moves? Well, what if it doesn't work out after she moves? What if? What if it works? What if you're successful? I can tell you that one of the scariest parts about our adventure is that Lisa and I had never manufactured a thing a day in our lives. We had never started a business and grown it and scaled it. But at the end of the day, that's what Google is for. Number 3 is you have to stay positive and enjoy the process. So when we started our Riveter, I always thought, okay, someday we're going to be successful. We're going to get there. One day there'll be enough money. There'll be enough time. And as I'm learning, I see that everything evolves constantly. My role is changing. The business is changing. You have to find a way to find satisfaction every day. Find success in the process. And then you have to be prepared to possibly do it all over again. And I'll give you an example. For our Riveter, the end game is not making bags. Okay, the end game is not piles of surplus. The end game is us continuing to challenge the status quo of military spouse unemployment. And we're going to do that because we're going to continuously take intentional risks and frame it all in positivity as we charge toward just questioning the state of manufacturing as it exists in America today. And so if you remember anything from my talk and from our time together, I want you to remember this. When you're in a time of transition, when you are forced to redefine yourself, or you choose to redefine yourself, embrace that process. Lean in, and I promise you, we will find the best versions of ourselves. Thank you.